The great crystal dome of Vorthak Prime had seen many strange things over the past 3,000 years, but nothing like what happened that day. Li Kang felt his stomach twist as reality bent around him. The experimental jump drive was supposed to take his small ship to the outer edge of known space. Instead, it threw him somewhere completely different. Blue sparks danced across his atmospheric suit as the emergency systems fought to keep him alive. When the bright flash faded, Kang found himself standing in the middle of a massive chamber. The walls were made of some kind of living crystal that pulsed with soft light. Strange symbols floated in the air, changing colors as they moved. The ceiling stretched so high above him that it disappeared into darkness. But it was not the room that made Kang freeze in place. It was the creatures looking at him. 47 different alien species sat in a perfect circle around him. Some looked like walking trees made of silver metal. Others were floating balls of pure energy that hummed with power. A few resembled giant insects with too many eyes and legs that moved in ways that hurt to watch. The largest creature stood nearly 10 feet tall. Its body was made of clear crystal, and Kang could see something like liquid light flowing through it. This being stepped forward, and when it moved, the air itself seemed to sing. Elder Praetor Vosathak had ruled the Galactic Council for over 800 years. In all that time, no one had ever entered the sacred chamber without permission. The crystal being extended long, thin appendages toward the human. These were not arms, but sensory organs that could read the thoughts and memories of any living creature. The psychic probe hit Kang like a cold wind. For a moment, he felt something, trying to push into his mind, searching through his thoughts like fingers through a drawer. But then something strange happened. The probe stopped. It could not get inside. Vosathak pulled back in surprise. His crystal body flashed red for just a moment. In 3,000 years of council meetings, no creature had ever resisted a Kalari. Mind probe. Not even the mighty Brutans with their warrior culture could block such a scan. Kang stood perfectly still. His heart was beating fast, but his face showed no fear. He had been a soldier for 15 years before becoming a starship captain. Fear was something he had learned to control long ago. "I come seeking alliance," Kang said in clear, perfect galactic standard. The chamber exploded with sound. 47. Different species began talking at once. Some made clicking noises like insects. Others produced deep rumbling sounds that seemed to come from underground. A few sang in high, clear notes that made the crystal walls vibrate, but all of them were saying the same thing in their own languages. This was impossible. The human was speaking Galactic Standard, the ancient language that took most species decades to learn. But according to council records, humans were primitive creatures from a restricted zone. They had barely discovered fire, let alone faster-than-light travel or universal translation. A creature that looked like a giant centipede with rainbow-colored fur raised itself up on its back legs. "The primitive speaks our tongue," it said in a voice like grinding stone. "How is this possible?" Kang turned to face the speaker. "My species has been watching and learning for longer than you think." This caused even more chaos in the chamber. The mechanical beings called Nexari began processing data at incredible speeds. Their robot bodies hummed as they accessed every database in known space. But they found nothing about humans that suggested advanced technology. Vosathak raised one crystal appendage, and the chamber fell silent. When a Kalari elder commanded attention, all species obeyed. It was not just respect. The Kalari possessed psychic abilities that could influence the minds of entire planets. "You claim to seek alliance," Vosathak said, his voice like the sound of wind through crystal caves. "But you are from the quarantined outer rim. Your species is restricted from contact with civilized worlds. Explain how you came to be here." Kang reached slowly for a device on his belt. Several of the warrior species tensed, ready to attack if needed. But Kang only pulled out a small data pad. "My ship's experimental drive malfunctioned. I was trying to reach the edge of our territory when I ended up here instead." He held up the device. "But I am glad the accident happened, because I have something you need to see." The datapad projected a holographic image above Kang's head. It showed a star map of the outer spiral regions of the galaxy. Red dots marked human colonies, but as the map played forward in time, the red dots began disappearing one by one. "These are my people's settlements," Kang explained. 17 worlds with over 2 billion humans. In the past 5 years, they have all gone silent. We thought it was equipment failure at first, then we sent ships to investigate. The hologram changed to show recordings from the investigation missions. The first images showed normal colony worlds with cities and farms and spaceports. But then came the after pictures. Dead worlds with no signs of life. The buildings were still there, but everything that lived was gone. "We found no bodies," Kang continued. "No signs of disease or war or natural disaster. The people and animals and even the plants were just gone. But we did find something else." The hologram showed a massive structure floating in space above one of the dead worlds. It looked like a combination of machine and living creature. Dark metal formed the basic shape, but organic-looking tubes and organs grew from it like tumors. The thing was easily the size of a moon. Several council members made sounds of disgust or fear. Even the mechanical Nexari seemed disturbed by the images. "We call them devourers," Kang said. "They appear without warning, consume everything that lives on a planet, then move on to the next target. Our weapons cannot hurt them. Our shields cannot stop them. Every time we think we have found a weakness, they adapt and become stronger." An insect-like creature with compound eyes clicked its mandibles. "If these beings are so powerful, how do you still live to bring us this warning?" Kang's expression became grim. "Because Earth is next, our home world. 3 billion people who have nowhere to run. The Devourers will reach us in less than 6 months." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes or eye-like organs of each species in turn. "I came here because our long-range sensors detected this place, a gathering of advanced civilizations. I thought maybe, if I could convince you that this threat affects us all, we might find a way to stop them together." Vostak's crystal body pulsed with thought. "You speak of cooperation, but your species is unknown to us. How do we know you tell the truth? How do we know you are not the real threat?" Kang had expected this question. He reached for another device on his belt, but this time several warrior species stepped forward threateningly. The Brutans were 7 feet tall with 4 arms and skin, like armor plates. Their leader, a female called Thex Mara, bared teeth that could bite through steel. "Move slowly, human," she growled. Kang complied, carefully removing a small vial filled with dark, oily liquid. "This is tissue we recovered from a damaged devourer construct. Our scientists have been studying it for 2 years." He set the vial on the floor and stepped back. "Your people are welcome to examine it. I think you will find it contains genetic material from species other than human." The Nexari leader, a tall robot called Primary Unit Zeph, extended a probe toward the vial. The mechanical being scanned the contents without touching it. After several minutes, Zeph's optical sensors flashed red. "The sample contains biological markers from 16 different species," Zeph announced in a voice like computer static. "Some of these genetic signatures match species in our database." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. If the human was telling the truth, then the Devourers had already consumed civilized species that the Council believed were still alive. "Which species?" Vostak demanded. Zeph processed the data. "The Valorians from Sector 7, the Mindaxi Collective, the Crystalline, entities of Corvash Prime. All report as healthy and active in our most recent communications." "When did you last receive actual communication from those worlds?" Kang asked quietly. The question sent a chill through the chamber. The Council operated on a vast scale across thousands of light years. They often went decades between direct contact with member species, relying on automated systems and long-range sensors to monitor distant worlds. Vostak's crystal form began pulsing faster. If the human was correct, the Devourers had been systematically destroying Council members for years, and no one had noticed because the distances were so great and the timescales so long. "Even if your warning proves accurate," said another Council member, a being of pure energy that spoke through electromagnetic waves, "why should we risk ourselves for a primitive species? Your people offer nothing we need." Kang straightened his shoulders. "You are right. We have no advanced technology to offer. No psychic powers or energy manipulation abilities, no weapons that could threaten beings like yourselves. He paused, looking around the chamber again. But we have something else. Something the Devourers have never faced before. And if you give us a chance, we will prove that sometimes the most primitive solution is exactly what you need. The chamber fell silent as 47 alien species considered the words of a single human who had arrived uninvited to their most sacred gathering. 3 light minutes away from the crystal dome of Vorthak Prime, Commander Yoon Hana sat in the captain's chair of the stealth ship Defiance. Her fingers drummed against the armrest as she watched the quantum communication display. The green light meant Li Kang was still alive inside the council chamber. But alive did not mean safe. Any change in their defensive systems? She asked her sensor officer. Lieutenant Kim Do-hyun shook his head without looking away from his screens. Still nothing. Whatever stealth technology they have, it is better than ours. I cannot detect any weapons or shields around that station. Hana was not surprised. The Galactic Council had been building technology for thousands of years while humans had only reached space travel 50 years ago. But sometimes being underestimated was an advantage. Keep monitoring, she ordered. If Kang gets into trouble, we move fast. Back in the council chamber, Li Kang watched 47 different species debate his fate. Some wanted to help Earth fight the Devourers. Others thought humans were too primitive to be useful allies. A few suggested that sacrificing one backward species might save the rest of the galaxy. But Kang was not listening to the debate. Instead, he was studying the aliens themselves. After 15 years as a soldier and 5 years as a ship captain, he had learned to read body language and behavior patterns. Even with beings that barely looked alive, there were always tells. The Kalari-like Elder Vostak pulsed faster when they were worried. The mechanical Nexari made tiny clicking sounds when processing difficult information. The energy beings flickered when they felt threatened, and right now, every single species in the chamber was showing signs of fear. That was good. Fear meant they understood the real danger, but Kang needed them to understand something else. He needed them to see that humans were not helpless victims waiting to be saved. "If I may," Kang said, interrupting the debate. The chamber fell silent. Again, "I would like to show you more about my people, about what we have learned from fighting the Devourers." Elder Vostak considered this. "Very well, but you will be monitored closely." Kang activated his datapad again. This time the hologram showed a detailed star chart of human space. But instead of showing colony worlds, it highlighted the locations of battles. "Humans have been fighting for our entire existence," Kang explained. "We fight each other, we fight nature, we fight against any force that tries to destroy us. When the Devourers came, we did what we always do. We fought back." The hologram showed the first human encounter with a Devourer ship. The human vessel was tiny compared to the alien construct, no bigger than a fighter compared to a battleship. The human ship fired everything it had: missiles, lasers, kinetic rounds. Nothing seemed to damage the Devourer. "Our first response was exactly what you would expect," Kang continued. "We used our biggest weapons and our best tactics, and we failed completely." The recording showed the human ship being destroyed in seconds. Several council members made satisfied sounds, as if this proved their point about human weakness. But Kang was not finished. "So we tried something different." The next recording showed another battle, but this time there were dozens of human ships. They moved in chaotic patterns, never staying in formation for more than a few seconds. Some ships rammed the Devourer construct at full speed while others fired from impossible angles. A few actually landed on the alien vessel and began cutting through its hull with mining equipment. "We learned that the Devourers study their enemies," Kang explained. "They analyze attack patterns and defensive strategies. Then they adapt to counter those methods. But they cannot adapt to chaos. They cannot predict actions that make no logical sense." The recording showed human pilots doing things that violated every rule of space combat. They flew their ships backwards. While firing forward, they used construction tools as weapons. Some actually got out of their ships in spacesuits and attacked the Devourer with hand tools. The mechanical Nexari leader made rapid clicking sounds as his processors tried to understand what they were seeing. "These tactics are inefficient. The loss rate is over 60%. "Yes," Kang agreed. We lost 6 ships out of every 10 that engaged the enemy. But something strange happened. The Devourer began making mistakes. Its responses became slower and less accurate, and eventually, we managed to damage it. The recording showed a section of the Devourer's hull suddenly cracking and venting atmosphere. The damage was small, but it was the first time any species had ever hurt one of the creatures. Primary Unit. Zeph processed this information at high speed. The entity was confused by your irrational behavior patterns. Its adaptive systems could not find a suitable response. Exactly, Kang said. The Devourers are incredibly intelligent. They can counter any logical strategy, but human thinking is not always logical. We make decisions based on emotion, desperation, and pure stubbornness. We do things that should not work, and sometimes they do work anyway. A new voice joined the conversation. It came from Dr. Park Ji-ho aboard the Defiance, transmitted through Kang's communication link. Captain, I am reading massive data transfers from the Council Station. They are analyzing our combat records. Kang nodded slightly to acknowledge the message, but kept his focus on the assembled aliens. My science officer has been studying Devourer biology for 2 years. With your permission, I would like him to share his findings. Elder Vostak extended a crystal appendage. We will allow this transmission, but any attempt at deception will result in immediate termination. The chamber's communication systems activated, and Dr. Park Ji-ho's image appeared as a hologram next to Kang. The young scientist looked nervous but determined. Honored council members, Ji-ho began, our research shows that Devourers are not truly alive in the way we understand life. They are hybrid constructs, part machine and part biological organism. But the biological components come from species they have absorbed. The hologram changed to show microscopic images of Devourer tissue. Each creature they consume adds new genetic information to their structure. This is how they adapt so quickly. They literally incorporate the strengths and abilities of their victims. Several council members leaned forward with interest. This was information they had never possessed. However, Ji-ho continued, this adaptation process has a weakness. The Devourers can only use abilities they have encountered before. They cannot prepare for something completely new. Thex Mara, the Bruton warrior, bared her steel teeth. Are you saying they have never absorbed human genetic material? That is correct, Ji-ho replied. And human genetics are unusual. We are not the strongest or fastest species, but we have something else. We have the ability to function effectively under extreme stress. Our brains actually work better when we are afraid or angry or desperate. The energy being that had spoken earlier flickered with what might have been confusion. This seems counterproductive. Fear should impair judgment. Kang stepped forward. Not for humans. When we are cornered, when all hope seems lost, we become more dangerous, not less. We take risks that no rational being would consider. And sometimes those risks pay off. Commander Hana, still monitoring from the Defiance, authorized the transmission of additional files. These showed human military history, thousands of years of warfare and conflict. But what made the records unique was how often humans had won battles they should have lost. The Council watched recordings of human soldiers, charging into certain death to save their comrades. They saw pilots ramming their damaged fighters into enemy ships. They witnessed countless acts of heroism that made no logical sense but somehow achieved victory. Your species appears to have a death wish, observed a floating jellyfish-like creature with dozens of eyes. No, Kang replied firmly. We have a life wish. We refuse to give up as long as there is any chance of survival. And we consider protecting others to be more important than protecting ourselves. This last statement caused another wave of discussion among the council members. Most advanced species had evolved beyond such primitive emotional responses. They made decisions based on logic, efficiency, and the greater good as defined by mathematical calculations. But humans were different. They made decisions based on principles that could not be quantified or analyzed by computer systems. Dr. Lee Yunwoo, the expedition's weapons specialist, joined the transmission from another ship in the human fleet. If I may add something, she said, we have developed weapons specifically designed to fight adaptive enemies. Her holographic image was accompanied by technical specifications for human military equipment. At first glance, the weapons seemed crude compared to Council technology. They fired simple projectiles instead of energy beams. They used chemical explosives instead of antimatter containment fields. These devices appear primitive, noted Primary Unit Zeph. They are, Yunwu agreed. That is the point. The Devourers cannot adapt to technology they do not understand, and they do not understand inefficiency. Our weapons work through brute force and simple physics. No advanced alien has used such methods for millennia. She activated a recording from a recent battle. It showed human soldiers using weapons that looked like they belonged in a museum. Gunpowder firearms, crossbows, even swords and axes in close combat. But the Devourer constructs they were fighting seemed confused by these attacks. The debate in the council chamber had been going on for 3 hours. 47 different species arguing in dozens of languages, their voices creating a symphony of confusion and disagreement. Li Kang stood in the center of it all, waiting, patiently, while beings far older and more advanced than him decided the fate of his entire species. Finally, Elder Praetor Vostak raised a crystal appendage for silence. The council has heard your words, human, but words are not enough. If Earth seeks alliance with civilized worlds, you must prove your worth through action. Kang had been expecting this. Every military alliance in human history had required some form of proof. What kind of test do you have in mind? It was Counselor Thex Mara who answered. The massive Bruton warrior stepped forward, her 4 arms crossed over her armored chest. Each of her hands was the size of Kang's head, and her teeth could bite through steel plates. The trial of essence, she declared. Combat simulation against the most dangerous scenarios known to Council records. You will face enemies that have defeated our greatest champions. If you survive, your species will be granted emergency membership status. If you fail, your people will face the Devourers alone. Several other council members made sounds of approval. The trial of essence was their ultimate test of worthiness. It had been used for over 1,000 years to evaluate potential alliance partners. Only 12 species had ever passed, and those victories had taken incredible sacrifice and loss of life. I accept, Kang said without hesitation. Primary Unit Zeph, the mechanical Nexari leader, tilted his robotic head. You do not understand the nature of this trial. The scenarios are designed based on actual threats that destroyed entire civilizations. The mortality rate among test subjects is 94%. Kang shrugged. Then I guess I will be in the 6%. This response caused murmurs of surprise throughout the chamber. Most beings who faced the trial of essence requested time to prepare, to study the historical records, to bring their best warriors and weapons. The human was volunteering to face it immediately, alone, and with nothing but the simple equipment he was already carrying. Elder Vosathak studied the strange creature before him. There was something in the human's mind that the Kalari Elder could sense even without a full psychic probe. It was not confidence or bravery. It was something deeper. A fundamental refusal to consider the possibility of failure. Very well, Vostak said. The trial will begin immediately. The crystal chamber began to shift and change around them. The walls flowed like liquid, reshaping themselves into a completely different environment. Advanced holographic projectors and matter manipulation fields created a testing arena that could simulate any conditions in known space. Within minutes, Kang found himself standing on a barren, rocky plain under a red alien sky. The air was thin and cold, and the gravity was about twice what he was used to. But his atmospheric suit adjusted automatically, and his body began adapting to the new conditions. First scenario, announced Thex Mara's voice from speakers hidden in the arena walls. Quantum predators from the Zephyr Nebula. These entities destroyed the Mindaxi Collective, a psychic species with reality manipulation abilities. 3 creatures materialized around Kang. They looked like shadows given physical form, constantly shifting between dimensions. Their bodies seemed to exist in several places at once, making them nearly impossible to target or predict. The quantum predators had been responsible for wiping out one of the most advanced species in Council records. The Mindaxi had possessed the ability to alter reality through pure thought, but even they could not defend against enemies that existed partially outside normal space-time. Kang drew his sidearm, a simple chemical projectile weapon that would have been laughable to any advanced species. But as the first predator lunged toward him, he did something unexpected. Instead of trying to aim at where the creature was, he fired at where it might be going. The bullet passed through empty air. The predator materialized in a slightly different location and continued its attack. But Kang was already moving, rolling, to the side, and firing again. This bullet also missed, but it forced the creature to change its planned position. The human was not trying to hit his targets. He was trying to make them react. For the next several minutes, Kang ran across the rocky plain in seemingly random directions, firing his weapon at empty spaces and shadows. The quantum predators pursued him, but their attacks became increasingly erratic as they tried to compensate for his unpredictable movements. Lieutenant Kim Do-yun, monitoring from the Defiance, watched in amazement as the arena's sensors tracked the battle. "Commander," he said to Yoon Hana, "he is not fighting them at all. He is confusing them." Hana nodded grimly. Classic human tactics. If you cannot win through strength, win through stupidity. Back in the arena, Kang suddenly stopped, running and turned to face the nearest predator. The creature had been anticipating another random movement, but instead the human stood perfectly still and emptied his weapon's entire ammunition clip at the space directly in front of him. The predator materialized right into the path of the bullets and dissolved with a sound like tearing silk. The remaining two creatures hesitated for just a moment, trying to process what had happened. That moment of confusion was all Kang needed. He pulled a small grenade from his belt, armed it, and threw it not at the predators, but at a large boulder near the center of the plain. The explosion brought down half a cliff face, creating a rock slide that swept across the area where the quantum predators had been positioning themselves. The creatures could phase through solid matter, but apparently they could not phase through several tons of falling rocks moving at high speed. "Impossible," breathed Thexamara from the observation area. "The quantum predators have never been defeated through physical force." "First scenario complete," announced the arena's computer system. "Subject survival rate, 100%. Enemy casualties, 100%. The rocky plain dissolved and was replaced by a completely different environment. Kang now stood in what appeared to be the interior of a massive space station. The corridors were filled with a strange blue mist that seemed to move with purpose. "Second scenario," Thexamara continued. "The consuming fog of Altair 7. This entity absorbed the technological civilization of the Nexari's predecessor species. It cannot be harmed by physical weapons and converts all energy directed at it into additional mass." The blue mist began, flowing toward Kang from all directions. Where it touched the walls and floor, those surfaces began changing color and texture. The fog was literally converting matter into more of itself. Previous test subjects had tried to fight the consuming fog with energy weapons, only to make it stronger. Others had attempted to outrun it, but the entity could move faster than any known form of propulsion. A few had tried to hide, but the fog could detect life signs through any known form of concealment. Kang looked around the space station corridor and began removing components from his atmospheric suit. The fog continued approaching, but he seemed completely unconcerned about the approaching death. Dr. Park Ji-ho, watching from his laboratory aboard the Defiance, suddenly understood what his captain was planning. "He is going to poison it," he said with admiration. Kang had disconnected his suit's waste recycling system and was mixing the contents with emergency medical supplies and ration packets. The combination created a chemical soup that would have been toxic to most forms of life. As the consuming fog reached him, Kang opened the improvised chemical weapon and poured it directly onto the approaching mist. The fog absorbed the mixture automatically, converting it into more of its own mass. But within seconds, the blue coloration began to fade. The entity had absorbed something it could not properly process, and the chemical incompatibility was destroying it from within. The fog is designed to convert organized matter into its own structure, Kang explained to the arena's recording systems. But human waste products are already partially broken down. The conversion process cannot handle the chemical chaos. The consuming fog began dissolving, its blue mist fading to gray and then to nothing. Second scenario complete. Subject survival rate, 100%. Enemy casualties, 100%. The space station environment faded, replaced by what appeared to be the surface of a dead moon. The ground was covered with strange geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. In the distance, massive structures rose toward the starless sky like twisted metal trees. "Third scenario," Thexmara announced, and for the first time her voice carried a note of worry. "The logic plague of Corvash Prime. This mimetic virus destroyed the most advanced computational species in known space by trapping their minds in recursive thought loops. It spreads through any form of information exchange, including visual contact. This was the test that had killed more trial participants than any other. The logic plague was not a physical enemy that could be fought with weapons or tactics. It was a virus of pure information that attacked the mind itself. Simply looking at the geometric patterns was enough to infect most beings with terminal madness." Kang studied the patterns on the ground for several long seconds. Then he did something that made every council member watching the trial gasp in shock. He closed his eyes. The appearance of the human fleet sent shockwaves through the council chamber. For 3,000 years, no unauthorized vessels had ever approached Vorthak Prime without being detected. The station's defensive systems were supposed to be impenetrable. Yet dozens of primitive human ships now hung in space around the sacred gathering place. Elder Praetor Vostak's crystal form pulsed with rapid flashes of light. "Impossible. Our sensors detected nothing." Commander Yun Hana materialized as a hologram in the center of the chamber, her image transmitted from the flagship Defiance. She was a small woman by human standards, but her presence filled the massive space with quiet authority. "Honored council members," she said with a respectful bow, "we did not wish to intrude on your deliberations. But when Captain Kang activated his emergency beacon, we knew it was time to reveal ourselves." Primary Unit Zeph, the mechanical Nexari leader, processed this information at high speed. His optical sensors flashed red with alarm. "Your vessels were cloaked using unknown technology. Our detection systems are the most advanced in known space." Hana smiled. "Not cloaked, Primary Unit. Hidden. We have been using the asteroid field around your station as cover. Our ships have been drifting with the space rocks for the past 6 hours, engines cold, running on minimal power." Several council members made sounds of disbelief. Hiding in plain sight was not a tactic that advanced species would consider. It was too simple, too primitive, too risky. But it had worked perfectly. "You have been spying on our sacred deliberations," accused Thexmara, the Bruton warrior. Her forearms reached for weapons that were not there. Council chambers were neutral ground where no weapons were permitted. "Not spying," Hana replied calmly. "Waiting. We knew that if Captain Kang could prove our worth, you would want to see evidence that he was not unique among humans. So we prepared a demonstration." She gestured, and new images appeared in the holographic display. These showed the human fleet in detail. The ships were clearly built for war, their hulls scarred by recent battles. But what made the council members lean forward with interest was how different each vessel appeared. Most advanced species built their fleets according to standardized designs, with each ship optimized for a specific role. But the human vessels seemed to follow no pattern at all. Some were sleek and fast. Others were massive and heavily armored. A few looked like they had been assembled from spare parts. "Our fleet consists of 37 ships," Hana explained. "Each one was designed by a different group of human engineers. We do not believe in single solutions to complex problems." Dr. Lee Yunwoo's image joined the holographic display. The weapons specialist had been analyzing Council defensive systems while they waited in the asteroid field. "We have been studying your station's security protocols," she said. "They are very impressive, but they are designed to counter threats that think like you do." She activated a tactical display showing Vorthak Prime's defensive grid, energy shields, particle beam weapons, automated defense platforms, psychic scramblers. The station could probably defeat any known military force. "However," Yunwoo continued, "your defenses assume that attackers will use advanced technology and logical tactics. They are not prepared for beings who fight with primitive methods and irrational strategies." To demonstrate her point, she showed recordings from recent human battles against devourer forces. The alien constructs possessed defensive systems that were centuries ahead of human technology, but human weapons kept finding ways to hurt them anyway. "Simple kinetic projectiles fired from magnetic accelerators," Yunwoo explained as the recording showed human ships launching what appeared to be chunks of metal at Devourer vessels. No energy signatures to detect, no exotic particles to counter, just pieces of iron moving very fast. The chunks of metal punched through Devourer shields and armor like they were made of paper. Energy barriers that could stop antimatter beams were useless against simple physical impacts. Colonel Zhang Hieri transmitted from her position aboard the assault ship Relentless. We have also developed new tactical doctrines based on our understanding of adaptive enemies. Her ship's records showed human strike teams using equipment that looked ancient compared to Council technology. Chemical explosive weapons, electromagnetic, pulse devices, even simple tools like crowbars and sledgehammers. The Devourers learn from every encounter, Hieri explained. They analyze enemy weapons and develop countermeasures within hours, but they cannot adapt to tools they do not recognize as weapons. The recording showed human soldiers breaking into Devourer constructs using mining equipment. The alien entities had no defensive protocols for beings who attacked with industrial machinery instead of military hardware. Chief Engineer Nam Somin joined the transmission from the engineering vessel Innovation. We have also made modifications to our ships that your sensors cannot detect because they violate known principles of starship design. She activated a display showing the internal structure of human vessels. Where Council ships used elegant, efficient layouts with every system optimized for maximum performance, human ships looked like chaos. Redundant systems everywhere. Backup power sources connected to primary weapons. Life support tied into navigation. Computers. Your ships are built for efficiency, Soman explained. Ours are built for survival. When something breaks, we fix it with whatever is available. When systems fail, we reroute power through completely different circuits. The Devourers cannot predict our capabilities because we do not know our own capabilities until we need them. This last statement caused significant discussion among the Council members. Advanced species built their technology according to precise specifications and careful planning. The idea of designing systems that were intentionally unpredictable seemed not just inefficient, but dangerous. But the results spoke for themselves. Human ships that should have been destroyed in the first minutes of combat were still fighting after hours of battle. Equipment that should have failed under impossible conditions somehow continued to function. Dr. Park Ji-ho transmitted the final piece of evidence from his laboratory ship discovery. We have also been analyzing the genetic samples we recovered from Devourer constructs. The results are disturbing. His holographic image was accompanied by microscopic views of alien tissue. The Devourers have absorbed genetic material from at least 40 species, but according to our analysis, several of these species are supposed to still be alive and active in Council space. A chill ran through the chamber as the implications became clear. We cross-referenced the genetic markers with Council databases, Jiho continued. The Valorians, the Mindaxi Collective, the crystalline entities of Corvash Prime, and 15 other species, all show as healthy and communicating normally with Council systems. Elder Vossithak's crystal form began pulsing rapidly. Are you suggesting that these species have been destroyed without our knowledge? Not just destroyed, Jiho replied grimly. Replaced. The Devourers are not just consuming worlds. They are mimicking the civilizations they destroy. Your communication. Systems are probably talking to artificial constructs that think they are the original species. This revelation sent shockwaves through the Council. If the human scientist was correct, the Devourers had been systematically infiltrating and replacing Council members for years or even decades. The galactic government had been slowly dying without anyone noticing. Primary Unit Zeph began rapid data processing, accessing communication logs and sensor records. Initial analysis confirms anomalous patterns in deep space communications. Several supposedly active species have not provided original content in their transmissions for extended periods. The mechanical being's optical sensors flashed with alarm. They have been repeating previous messages with minor variations. The deception is sophisticated, but detectable upon close examination. Admiral Choi Min-seo's image appeared in the chamber, transmitted from the command ship Indomitable. Council members, we estimate that you have lost at least 20% of your actual membership to Devourer infiltration. The entities are not just a threat to human space. They are already inside your government. The chamber erupted in panicked discussions. 47 species began questioning whether their neighbors were real or artificial replacements. The unity that had held the council together for millennia began to crack under suspicion and fear. But Li Kang, still standing in the center of the chaos, raised his voice above the noise. "This is exactly what the Devourers want," he said firmly. "They want you to fight each other instead of fighting them. They want you paralyzed by fear and suspicion." The chamber gradually fell silent as the aliens turned their attention back to the human. "You want to know the difference between humans and every other species in this room?" Kang continued. "When we discover that our enemies have infiltrated our ranks, we do not waste time being afraid. We get angry, and then we fight back." Commander Hana nodded from her holographic projection. "Captain Kang is correct. We have known about Devourer infiltration tactics for 2 years. But instead of letting fear paralyze us, we used that knowledge to develop countermeasures." She activated a new display showing human colony worlds. But these were not the dead, empty planets from earlier recordings. The combined fleet that assembled at the edge of human space was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Council vessels with their elegant curves and advanced energy systems flew alongside human ships that looked like they had been built in. Scrapyards. Kalari crystal ships hummed with psychic energy next to human vessels that communicated through simple radio broadcasts. Admiral Choi Min-seo stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the tactical display as more ships arrived. Every hour, 300 council vessels and 41 human ships preparing to face the largest Devourer fleet ever recorded. "Status report," she ordered. Commander Yoon Hana looked up from her communication station. "The Nexari battle computers are having trouble integrating with our targeting systems. They keep trying to optimize our firing patterns, but our weapons work better when they are used randomly." "Tell them to stop helping," Min-seo replied. "We fight better when we are confused." This was not the kind of military coordination that the Council was used to. Their fleets normally operated with perfect synchronization, every ship following precise battle plans calculated by advanced computers. But human tactics seemed to work better when nobody knew what was going to happen next. Lieutenant Colonel Song Tai-woo transmitted from his position aboard the assault ship Defiant. "Admiral, the Bruton warriors want to know why we are not forming proper battle lines. They think our formation looks like chaos." "Because it is chaos," Min-seo replied. "Tell Counselor Thexmara that we will attack from 17 different directions at once, using weapons that make no sense, following battle plans that we are making up as we go along." The Bruton warriors' response came through the communication system moments later. "This strategy violates every principle of military science." "Exactly," said Captain Li Kang from his position aboard the newly arrived Determination. "The Devourers have studied military science for thousands of years. They know how to counter every logical tactic, but they have never faced an enemy that wins through pure stubbornness." The Devourer fleet was massive. Long-range sensors showed over 400 of the hybrid constructs, each one the size of a small moon. They moved in perfect formation, their biomechanical hulls pulsing with absorbed energy from dozens of conquered worlds. Dr. Park Ji-ho had been studying the enemy formation from his laboratory ship. "The Devourers are using a classic encirclement strategy," he reported. "They plan to surround Earth and consume it systematically. Very efficient." "Good," replied Dr. Lee Yoon-woo from her weapons platform. "Efficient enemies are predictable enemies, and predictable enemies can be surprised." The first battle began 3 days before the Devourer fleet reached Earth. A small group of human ships, led by Colonel Jang Hyeri, intercepted the enemy scouts at the edge of the solar system. The Devourers expected resistance, but they were prepared for conventional space combat. Energy weapons, missile barrages, electronic warfare. Instead, they encountered something completely different. Hyeri's ships opened fire with weapons that should not have worked in space. Compressed air cannons firing chunks of scrap metal. Chemical. Rockets loaded with industrial paint that stuck to enemy hulls and interfered with their sensors. One human vessel actually launched a cargo container full of old kitchen appliances at a Devourer construct. The enemy responded with advanced energy, shields, and adaptive armor. But their defensive systems could not adapt to attacks they did not understand. How do you counter a weapon that fires refrigerators and washing machines at high speed? First contact successful, Hayeri reported as her small fleet withdrew. Enemy casualties, minimal. Enemy confusion, maximum. They have no idea what just happened. The main Devourer fleet arrived at Earth 2 days later. They found a world that appeared to be completely defenseless. No orbital battle stations, no planetary shields, no massive fleets of warships waiting to challenge them. Instead, they found something much worse. Chief Engineer Nam Somin had spent the past month turning Earth's entire solar system into a weapons platform. Asteroids had been hollowed out and filled with explosives. Communication satellites had been modified to emit electromagnetic pulses. Even the space debris around Earth had been weaponized with small rocket motors and proximity sensors. When the Devourers moved in to begin their systematic consumption of the planet, they discovered that everything in the solar system was trying to kill them. Mining equipment attacked their ships. Weather satellites fired improvised missiles. A derelict space station from 50 years ago suddenly came to life and began ramming enemy vessels. But the real surprise came when the main battle began. The Council fleet, led by Elder Praetor Vostak's command ship, engaged the Devourers, using traditional tactics, energy weapons blazing, shields at maximum, formations perfect and coordinated. They were magnificent to watch and completely ineffective. The Devourers had seen these tactics before. Their adaptive systems quickly developed countermeasures, energy shields that blocked plasma beams, armor that absorbed particle weapons, electronic warfare systems that jammed Council communications. Within an hour, the Council fleet was being pushed back despite their superior numbers and technology. But then the human fleet arrived. Captain Song Tai-Wu led the first wave. His ships, scattered across space with no apparent formation or coordination. They opened fire with weapons that violated every principle of space combat. Kinetic projectiles that moved too slow to be effective but somehow kept hitting their targets. Electromagnetic weapons that should not have worked at all but disabled. Enemy systems anyway. One human ship actually used a mining laser to carve rude words into the hull of a Devourer construct. The enemy tried to adapt, but adaptation required understanding, and nobody, not even the humans themselves, understood what they were doing. Lieutenant Kim Do-Yun, now commanding his own vessel, transmitted tactical updates that made no sense to anyone. Target the big tentacle thing with the weird glow. Use the rainbow weapon, not the explodey one. If that does not work, try hitting it with something heavy. These were not military orders. They were not even coherent communication, but somehow they worked. The Devourers began making mistakes. Their perfect formations broke apart as they tried to counter attacks that followed no pattern. Their adaptive systems overloaded trying to process defensive requirements for weapons that should not exist. Dr. Park Ji-ho observed the battle from his science vessel and made a discovery that changed everything. The Devourers are not just confused, he reported. They are starting to malfunction. Their biomechanical systems cannot handle the stress of trying to adapt to chaos. This was something no one had predicted. The hybrid constructs were incredibly sophisticated, but their sophistication was also their weakness. They were designed to process and counter any logical threat. When faced with illogical threats, their processing systems began to break down. Commander Hana seized on this discovery. Immediately, all ships increase random behavior. Stop trying to make sense. The more confused we are, the more confused they become. What followed was the strangest space battle in galactic history. Human vessels began using their own ships as weapons, ramming enemy constructs, and then somehow surviving the impact. Council ships abandoned their elegant tactics and started copying human chaos, firing weapons at random targets and maneuvering in patterns that hurt to think about. The Devourers, faced with an enemy that made no sense, began to retreat. But Captain Li Kang was not finished with them. "All ships, pursue the enemy," he ordered. "Do not let them regroup. Keep attacking until they are all destroyed or they surrender." "Devourers do not surrender," pointed out Primary Unit Zeph from his mechanical battle platform. "Then we keep fighting until they learn how," Kang replied. The pursuit lasted for 6 hours. Human and council ships chased the Devourer fleet across 3 star systems, attacking them with increasingly ridiculous weapons and tactics. By the end, human vessels were literally throwing garbage at enemy ships and somehow causing significant damage. The final Devourer construct was destroyed when Chief Engineer Soman rammed it with a cargo hauler loaded with spare parts and old coffee machines. The explosion was visible from Earth. "Battle complete," reported Admiral Minseo. "Enemy casualties, 100%. Allied casualties, surprisingly low, considering we had no idea what we were doing." The victory celebration that followed lasted for 3 days. Representatives from 47 species gathered on Earth, many of them setting foot on a primitive world for the first time in their lives. Elder Praetor Vosathak stood in the human city of Sol, his crystal form reflecting the lights of the celebration around him. Humans and aliens mingled together, sharing food and stories and laughter. "I do not understand your species," he admitted to Captain Kang, who was standing nearby with his young daughter on his shoulders. "Most of the time, neither do we," Kang replied. "But that seems to work in our favor." The Crystal Elder studied the chaos of the celebration. Mechanical Nexari were learning to dance from human children. Bruton warriors were trying Earth food and discovering they liked pizza. Energy beings were somehow managing to participate in karaoke. "Your people have taught us something important," Vostok said. "For 3,000 years, we believed that progress meant becoming more organized, more logical, more predictable.